I am at the end of my rope because I don't know where to go from here. And what I'm talking about is as a society, our response to child sex abuse and child sex trafficking. I just don't really know how to make people care about this in any other way. If I thought just saying everyone is an fucking asshole and just calling people assholes was gonna work, I would try it, but I know it's not, because people generally don't respond well to that kind of talk. But that hasn't been my main form of advocacy on this issue. I think I've gone to several different platforms and tried to have polite and compassionate and inclusive discussions on this, where I cite facts and figures and studies and articles. And I have tried to even use my own experiences, like be open and be vulnerable with people and talk to them about how my lived experiences and how I have seen the world differently and seen people differently as a result of the things that I have been through. And it just doesn't work. Like, nobody is like having any kind of meaningful discussion about this. And, you know, I'll write something somewhere and somebody will do a little heart or a little, you know, teary thing. And I'm like, you just pressed a button. Like, what are you actually doing for me here? What are you actually doing for any of us here? Or they'll be, you know, sending you love and support. Like, that is just a phrase that we know that took you literally probably 30 seconds to type up or less and hit the send button. Like, that does not actually mean anything. That does not actually help anyone. Like, it doesn't even help me personally to know that you are sending me love and support. Like, that is not a thing. That is not anything that actually shows up to me. If you're gonna send me love and support, like, listen, guys, like, I mean this. If somebody is asking for help, if somebody is out there posting about difficult times, do not just write them, like, I'm sending you love and support. Like, send them a message, you know, like, engage, like, say hi, how's it going? How are you doing today? You know, like, that is what support looks like. Give them a call. Like, don't just say I'm sending you love. That is nothing. That does not mean anything. And I think what kind of got all this started was I was on Reddit and somebody asked, respectfully asked, when I'm writing fan fiction, like, do you guys think it's appropriate to include a sex scene with people who are underage? And, you know, of course, there are tons of gross people out there. Or if they're not, they are gross. I'm sorry, they're gross. But, you know, we can dress it up and say something like, they're just really not thinking about it. And I have to assume that they're just really not thinking about it because they're just out here writing. Some people are just writing ridiculous stuff. And some people are out here writing like, you know, of course you can write it. Like, or, you know, you have to be careful because people are out here screaming pedophile, blah, blah, blah. And so I just kind of weighed in. And I was like, I left a few different responses, but I was like, look, you know, fictionalized versions of a sexual relationship between an adult and a child do have real life effects. It doesn't matter how much imbued in fantasy that relationship is. It just does. And, you know, somebody's like,
oh, can I see, any studies on that? Because, I just don't know where the responsibility is. Like, what if I want to write about violence and murder and blah, 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 blah? You're telling me I can't do this?
I'm like, okay, first of all, I cannot strip you of your right to write about anything. Like, obviously, you can always write about whatever the fuck you want to write about. I'm just asking you to think and to make a conscious choice about what your priorities, what your values are in this situation, and try and act according to your values. If you are saying that children are less important to you than the instant gratification that comes with getting like a bunch of messages on your, or likes or whatever, votes on your story, that's fine, but then be upfront and honest about that. Like, can we please just be honest that we don't care about children? Please, like, that is better than saying that we do all the time and not helping them ever. So he says this stuff, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave you these 3 articles from, college people or whatever, researchers, and have fun, have a ball, read it up if you want. And I think, this is not really rocket science, you guys. Like, it is not, some kind of impossible task to figure out how society might be affected by fictionalized, romanticized, glorified accounts of relationships, sexual relationships between an adult and a child. Like, let's just walk through this together for a second. So how does this affect society? Well, when we normalize, romanticize, and glorify these kinds of relationships in fiction, it desensitizes the public to the problem, first of all. Second of all, it gives them a fundamentally inaccurate and incomplete view of what it is like to be a part of one of those relationships. It rarely, if ever, touches on the lasting effects on your ability to have relationships with, like, not just sexual relationships, like friendships with people. It has a lasting effect on your self-worth and how you see yourself and where you get your value from. It creates an incredible amount of pain, like an incredible amount of pain. It is so much pain that people often turn to many self-destructive behaviors in order to survive. And that is another thing. Like, please stop with your like wholesale condemnation of the things that people do to survive. Like, you do not know their story. It doesn't matter if they were abused or not. Like, stop condemning drug addicts. Stop condemning people with eating disorders or people who cut or people who do whatever. They are surviving. Okay? They are making it through. Please, anyone who engages in any kind of self-destructive behavior, do not feel like what you are doing or what you did was anything more or less than you just trying to survive. You're getting through. Like, seriously, fuck everyone else. I'm not saying that it's ideal. I'm not saying that I want people out here to be addicts forever or self-harming forever or being caught up in an eating disorder forever. But, like, just, I think we can all kind of decrease the shame across the board on these issues. Like, please, for the love, because shame is never helpful. And so to get back to what I was saying, so it desensitizes the public, gives them a fundamentally inaccurate view of what's happening. And now let's think about how it affects people who are adults who are actively having sexual relationships with children, want to have sexual relationships with children. It affects them because it does a similar thing that it does to society. It normalizes it. It gives it some kind of, however feeble justification. These people are sick, like, it is not a normal person or a normal, I don't know, maybe it is a normal person. It is not a healthy view of the world to like just go around raping children. Like, can we agree on this? Like, really? So, it does create a little bit of like a web of justification. It adds to that in their head. Because, you know, a lot of times in these romanticized accounts, there's a lot of talk of love and this and that and the other and whatever kind of bullshit. And it just kind of fuels that whole process between I want to do this and I'm doing this. And lastly, how does this affect victims? This affects victims, fictionalized accounts of adult and child sexual relationships, by making victims feel like the public perceives our struggles and our experiences through rose-colored glasses. And it makes it so much harder to come out and talk about how we've actually been affected, because it does increase shame and it does make us feel that like we are not going to be met with compassion or with understanding, because at the very least everyone is ignorant and at the very most everyone condones it. You see what I'm saying? Like, it just kind of is so unhelpful. And the less people come forward to talk about their experiences, I mean, it's often means less healing for them individually. And it means like the more often it's going to happen, because these things thrive in secrecy. Like, that is why it is still happening, is because no one is talking about this, because no one is talking about their experiences. And I'm not blaming victims for that. Like, every person should be able to, I guess, come out about their experiences when and where and how and to whom they feel most comfortable. Like, that is I ideally would wish for that. And people are going to have a much harder time feeling comfortable if we contribute to this culture of silence on this issue. And so, you know, I feel like what I just illustrated, if anyone just kind of takes a second to think about it, you know, and have some kind of level of empathy and understanding, like, nothing that I said was like some kind of crazy astronomy calculation, whatever. Like, you can just think for a second before you just act on whatever's gonna like make you a little happy in your heart that you're gonna get some likes. Because really that is what, like, also, can we just think about what your motives for in that moment for writing a sexual relationship between an adult and a child? What is your, what is that going to add? If you are not a victim of that kind of situation, it's not really cathartic. It's not going to be educational, because it's not going to talk about anything real. And, it is really just there to titillate the public. Like, that is really it. You know, we all, as a society, we love murder shows. And, oh my God, I love Law and Order SVU. Like, bitch, are you serious? Are you fucking serious? Like, you roll out these stories of token victims. And, you know, then the episode wraps up. You see Dick Wolf's name flash up on the screen, and everything's right in the world again. And that little child victim never has to think about what they went through, because the perp went away, and Elliot yelled at him in his face and slammed his fist around. That is not real. Like, can we all just kind of accept that what we see on TV is not real? That is not where the story ends. Like, as a public watching that show, we all have the luxury of being like, oh, yes, I feel satisfied now. Victims don't. And even victims who have the courage to go to trial with their story and conviction happens and jail time happens for the perpetrator, for a lot of victims, initially that sentence, because it's not always life, it's rarely life, that sentence becomes a little bit of a time bomb. At least initially, I am hopeful that that people, as time goes on and they are able to progress in their own recovery, are able to create a sense of safety. But it's not, it's not this perfect little thing with a happy ending. And I think we have, created this system where journalists and actors and authors get notoriety and fame and money on the backs and with the blood of victimized children. We trot out their stories when it's comfortable and push the people away when we're getting tired of it because it's too much. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. I will fight the shit out of anyone who comes at me with, Game of Thrones is a really great show. Fuck you, bitch. It's not. And I know that's like such an unpopular opinion to have. And I'll admit that part of the reason I don't watch Game of Thrones is because too many people have told me to watch it, and it's just like, no. But the real thing for me about Game of Thrones is the incest thing. And you're gonna, I don't know even why people bother talking to me about this, but it is the same situation. You do not know how many conversations I have had, particularly with men, who are like, but wait, like, isn't incest kind of hot? And I'm like, okay, like, if you have ever talked to someone who has been a victim of incest, they're not finishing that story with, yeah, but it was kind of hot. No. I mean, there might be someone out there who thinks that it is. There might be a contingent. I mean, I cannot speak for everyone. Everyone's human experience is different, but I can say that every victim of incest that I have met, it is not a fun time for them. It has left them with years of therapy and work that they have to do on themselves, and it is painful, and it is just really awful. Just incredibly, incredibly awful. So to see someone, again, like making it somehow romantic or like, sexually exciting is just, to me, like such an irresponsible, George R.R. Martin is such an irresponsible piece of shit. I don't give a fuck how much he looks like your grandpa. He's an asshole motherfucker. He needs to take a step back and fuck his own face. Like, for real, I hate him. But yeah, I mean, just level of idiocy is just overwhelming to me sometimes. So, and this is all bringing me to the Me Too campaign. So when I am in a more diplomatic mood, I like to think of the Me Too campaign as a way for people to come together and share a common experience. And we'll get to this in a little bit, but I think when people say, why are they including harassment and sexual assault? I never really had a problem with that because I know that sexual harassment can change the way you value yourself. It can change the way you feel about safety and all this kind of stuff. So I don't mind including that together. And I think that when I'm feeling diplomatic, I would like to be there for every woman. Like, I would like to be there for every person who has gone through trauma and let them know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to get help. It is okay to process it, in however that looks for you. And I I think that that's great. However, there are a few issues with the Me Too movement. I mean, I think for me, reading those stories, it was incredibly isolating. Like, incredibly isolating, because all you get is page after page and story after story and comment after comment of a woman telling her experiences, and it still does not look like mine. There are so few stories that I saw that were really having anything to do with child sex abuse or child sex trafficking. And nobody's even considering it. Like, no one's even... I mean, there's a few things... And I think also, like... I don't know, like, people... This is about to get a little hairy, guys, but I'm just going to say it. When people talk about how, you know, sexual harassment and sexual assault should not be labeled together, it makes me laugh, honestly. Because I'm out here being like, I know people who you were raped a few times or more times than you can remember, or, you know, whatever. You had experiences more times than you can remember of men being aggressive. Let me tell you, there are people out here who were raped consistently from the age, for years. Do you, like, how, there are people who have been sodomized with power drills, baseball bats, who have had their genitals electrocuted, who have, you know, all kinds of crazy shit. And somehow that's okay to lump in with your stuff? Like, you're going to draw a distinction between sexual harassment and rape, but you're not going to draw a distinction between rape over the course of years and, you know, a one-time thing? Please, like, do not come at me with that bullshit. How is that fair? How is that in the same class? Like, everyone just wants to be the biggest victim all the time, and I'm telling you, you do not want to be a victim. Okay? Can we just stop with that? Like, you don't. Being a victim is not about getting seen and being recognized for your pain. That is not what being a victim is. Being a victim is being voiceless. It is having your identity taken from you. It is not fun. It is not, you know, a little badge of honor. I'm a victim. You know, no. And you as grown-ass women need to stop acting like you can't imagine a situation worse than your own. You know, and this is why it also gets to me when they're talking about, you know, well, male victims, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, adult male victims, I feel kind of the same way. But children, I have as much equal amounts of empathy for little boys who go through sexual trauma as I do for little girls. And, you know, especially when the incidents are happening before puberty. You know, people like to say pedophiles have a preference or whatever, and they may like develop some kind of personal preference, but really, pedophilia is most often a crime of opportunity. They're going to get the kid that's easiest to get, and it doesn't really matter if it's a boy or a girl. Or any other gender identity. It's just, you know, ugh. And I really feel like in this whole Me Too campaign, like that shit just kind of bothers me. It bothers me that there's so much vitriol out there about who can and who can't be involved in the movement, and you're still silencing this huge community of people who have different experiences than you do. In the name of sisterhood. Let me tell you something about sisterhood. Sisterhood is a bunch of bullshit. Like, where was the I never had any kind of sisterhood. Never, except for with my actual, like, blood sister, who I love and adore more than anyone besides my brother in the world. Like, she is amazing. But, you know, with women at large, no. Do you have, sisterhood when there's a little girl in the projects who's being raped by her mom's boyfriend? No. Is there sisterhood involved for the Native girls and women who are raped and kidnapped and go missing? No. Is there sisterhood for the child brides in Afghanistan? No. Is there sisterhood for the little girls in Cambodia and Thailand who are being forced into child sex trafficking? No. Like, the list of countries and situations in which children are being pushed down and hurt and neglected and is just kind of huge. And like, this whole illusion that we like come together as women to support each other is a bunch of bullshit. Like, it just is. Like, please do not hit me with this, like, we're just all women, kindreds. Like, no. That has not been my experience. I know plenty of women for whom that has also not been their experience. Like, we need to stop pretending that, like, we're just automatically going to be there for each other, because, we're not. Like, I am not crying for these women. I'm not. Like, I'm just so done with this whole idea that I need to sit here and hold your hand as you're talking to me about some teacher who touched your boob, and I can't say anything because my story might be too traumatic. My story might have a bad effect on you. So like, I feel trapped in that situation, or my story might make you feel differently. And I think, people say it doesn't make you feel differently, but it does, but not in any kind of helpful way. Like, it doesn't make people feel differently and then they're like, oh, like, maybe I should, be kinder, or like check in and see how she's doing. Excuse me, sorry, I need to give up cigarettes. It makes people feel different in the sense of like, she's probably a little crazy. She's probably a little nutsy. And then they just kind of forget. And you'll just never hear from them again. I remember I had a conversation with a friend once, and she was like, tell me your deepest secret. And I was like, I was raped beginning at the age of 4 for 8 years. And she was like, mine is that my parents argue. And I was like, And I understand that I do truly feel like the worst thing anyone knows is the worst thing they know. And there's no point in really comparing things most of the time. However, like, I just don't understand how you think saying that your parents argue is an appropriate response to me telling you that I was raped for 8 years. Like, what? And then we proceed to have a whole conversation, because that's the kind of person I am, about how her parents arguing has affected her and how she's doing living at home despite the fact that her parents are arguing, yada, 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 yada. And I just kind of feel like it's just bizarre to me that people can say that there's a notion of sisterhood. Like, that is just honestly bizarre to me. But I guess moving on from that topic, I mentioned before that I try to get a conversation started, and I don't want people to think that, like, I feel like I'm the only one trying to get a conversation started. I know, like, if we just think about one of the most influential people in the country, in the world, like Oprah Winfrey, she has tried and tried again to get a conversation started. She has done numerous episodes, specials, this, that, and the other about childhood sexual abuse and pedophilia. And, I don't think it's her fault that, a real conversation hasn't started. I think it is, people are out here saying, oh, I love Oprah, and I watched her religiously, and I quote Oprah, and blah, blah, blah. And, like, so this is something that's clearly important to this woman. She has personal experience and still nothing? Like, really? Still we can't maybe try and be there for these children? No? All right. So this brings me to, I feel like I'm at a point where I can really empathize with a group like the Black Panthers. And I can really empathize with any contingent within an oppressed group of people, a marginalized group of people, that feels like the only way forward is through violence. Because you just don't listen. Like, as a society, we're just not listening, and it doesn't matter how, I feel like it doesn't even matter how many people come out about their experience. Like, we're still going to be in the minority. It's still not going to be happening to most people. And I am at a point in my own mental health journey where I feel like we should start a war. Like, I feel like I would go to war over this issue. Because I'm just so done with people being so completely attached to their ignorance. And I know, like, you don't have to worry. Like, I know that violence is really almost never the answer. And that a violent, like, outbreak on this or any issue is likely to just traumatize more people. And also traumatize the group of people that I care most about, which is children. And so, yeah, I feel like clearly that is not really a viable option. However, like, I don't really know what our other choices are. And I think there are a lot of frustrating things about this too. Like, I think that one of the issues is that we talk about how being a pedophile, I think if we, like, took a consensus, everyone who's not a pedophile, and I'm sure even some people who are pedophiles would say, like, oh yes, pedophiles are the worst people ever, gross. You know, whenever I talk to people who are, like, pro or anti the death penalty, they're always like, but there are exceptions, like crazy murderers and pedophiles. And we talk a lot about this. Like, we have this great lip service that we give, that we hate people who abuse children and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But we hate people who abuse children more than we love children who have been abused. And we don't even hate people who have abused children that much, like, for real. We really don't. And that is completely frustrating, because to have that kind of rhetoric out there and have 20% of children being abused, like, it's a little ridiculous. It is like, how can you be out here saying we hate pedophiles so much, and yet 1 in 5 children? It's 1 in 5 children. How does that work? And I think also the other issue is that there's no real, like, there's so little discussion on this issue. It's not like people are yelling back, like, no, I think everyone should be able to fuck little children. Like, that's not an argument that is, like, given credence in the media or in our society. Instead, it's just silence. It is just complete silence. And I think you have to realize, like, that kind of silencing is so incredibly oppressive. That you can only silence people for so long before they freak the fuck out. And this is exactly why you see a certain number of victims who have been through intense abuse as children react in violence, because you have silenced them. over and over and over again, just like they were silenced as children when they felt like they needed to get help. Abuse in itself strips away your voice and your identity. And we as a society compound that. We compound that effect. We work with the abusers to continue that silencing. And it is awful. It is an awful experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone, really. And I don't know why it's so hard. I have a few theories. I think that one of the reasons that it's hard for people to talk about this is guilt. I think we have a real problem dealing with guilt in this day and age. And just to separate this for you, guilt is different than shame. Shame is I am bad. Victims often feel shame. They often feel guilt too, but shame, I know for me, shame and fear have been like my two steadiest emotions. So shame is I am bad. Guilt is I have done something bad. I have done something that does not line up with my values or my beliefs or my whatever. Like, guilt is I've done something bad. And the thing about guilt is, yes, it's an uncomfortable emotion. It's uncomfortable to think you betrayed yourself, you betrayed someone else, you did something that you wish you didn't do. But like, the thing about it is that everyone feels it sometimes. Everyone has done something wrong. None of us are perfect. We say things without thinking. We do things without thinking. We say things with thinking, and then we look back on it. It was like, that was kind of a shitty thing to do. We do things while thinking, and we look back on it. That was kind of a shitty thing to do. Like, it is okay to be guilty. It is okay to feel guilty. Like, we have to stop. The way people react to guilt is insane. Especially parents. Looking at you, parents. But just as a society in general, like it is a strange, and so I think we'll do anything to avoid that feeling. We'll do anything to push it away, to blame it on someone else, to blame it on something else, to just shake off any kind of responsibility we have. And to shake off that icky feeling, because nobody likes to feel icky, but we have to learn how to sit with that icky feeling sometimes. We have to learn how to say, hey, like, I said something shitty, and or I did something shitty and I'm sorry. And here's how I'm going to not say or do something shitty again, and here's how I'm going to try and make this right. And I think that is a really kind of big issue. I mean, we see this on Facebook all the time when someone says something about, usually about something political, and then someone else says something back that's political without thinking, and they just get lost in this. Nobody ever thinks about their position ever again, or the other person's position ever again, because now they said something, they just have to defend it. It doesn't matter if it's based on lies, truth, or bullshit. Brené Brown. We just keep saying it. So yeah, I think that's kind of a shitty place to be in as a society. I think that's pretty piss poor. And I think when I talk about violence as a solution, I think a lot of people will be like, this bitch is broken. And I might be broken. It is entirely possible that I am broken. But if I'm broken, you all are empty. And you've been empty, given birth to empty children, like, who grow up into empty adults. Like, it is, I mean, and you can see this in the way we don't care. You can see this in the way people feel like their connection to a movie or a piece of music or a piece of art is more important than the child that artist violated. someone wants to come up and tell me, oh, but I just love Midnight in Paris. Fuck you. You want to relate so much to, an erotic asshole? I mean, what do you want me to say? Like, yes, by all means, keep supporting him. The child doesn't matter. It's okay. Like, it's just some bullshit. It's a bullshit story. Like, my relationship to this piece of art is so much more important than a human being's life. Like, please, can we stop acting like that's not what we're saying? Can we, just strip away the bullshit, please? And just, if we are going to say that we don't care that much about victimized children, then say it. And if saying that makes you uncomfortable and it makes you feel guilty, change it. And people are, out here, there's so many examples of people, not just with artists, in sports, in our day-to-day lives. People want to come here and say, defend people that they know and who are doing things like this, defend their friends and family members. I mean, I understand that when someone in the family is accused of something like this, it is a difficult situation for the family members if you love your family member. And so I understand that that's a difficult situation. And whatever choice that person makes has to be based on their own set of values. However, if you are a parent, there is no family member, there is no person who takes precedence, who takes priority over your child. No fucking person. I don't care if it's your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friend, your best friend, your brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin. Nobody comes before your child. That is just the way it is. I am not a parent and I know that. We need to stop pretending that that's not the way the world works. That is absolutely the way things need to be. When you make the decision to bring a child into your life, to bring a child into this world, that is your priority now. Full stop. Why is there so much confusion on this issue? It seems pretty obvious to me. So that's a completely, if you are a parent, your allegiance and your trust is in your child, always. I think it's also important just to say about myself that I'm aware that I'm not a perfect person. I am aware that I am not the most oppressed person. I have a huge amount of privilege. And the fact that I've been fortunate enough to have this privilege has directly contributed to how long I've been able to stay alive. And I know that there are many children who are going through awful things and adults who have been through awful things who don't have the same level of privilege I do. And I believe that my activism on this issue and my advocacy in this issue is not done correctly if I don't prioritize the needs of, especially of poor children of color, because in this country they have the most limited access to resources and the most difficult time getting resources, and also the most difficult time getting visibility. And when your voice is already being squashed down because of abuse and you add on different layers of systemic oppression, I'm frustrated with the silence I get in this one area of, personal oppression. I can't imagine what it is like when you have multiple layers of silencing happening around your experiences. So I realize that in the work that I do, I want to make sure that we are talking and we are giving a space for people who deal with a more oppressed experience in our world. And that doesn't mean that I don't want any resources or space to be given to anyone else. I'm just saying, like, you know, we need to include everybody. If we're not including everybody, and often when I say including everybody, it means that we're going to have to make a special effort to include poor children of color, because they are going to be pushed down so much more than even poor white children. So when I say include everybody, it's include everybody and make a special effort to include poor children of color, because everybody needs help in this issue. Like, we are not really doing anyone right in this issue. But I think that just getting, you know, basic healthcare, mental and physical, access to education, like, people are out here living in food deserts in the United States, you know? So I think all of that kind of stuff, visibility, you know, whatever, like, we need to know where those resources are the most limited and focus on making sure that everyone is at least, you know, has, if you guys know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is, you know, at least kind of getting the baseline of their needs met. So yeah. And I also want to say, I know that I've been pretty offensive in what I've said. I know that a lot of people are going to feel super invalidated and probably angry about the things that I've said. And I assure you that I didn't say those things without thinking. Like, this, I did think about this for a long time. And I felt like the truth of the situation from the perspective of someone who has had my kind of experiences growing up still needed to be shared. And I do feel bad that it was kind of necessary to invalidate people to say my truth. But my number one goal in life is to make sure that I am helping as many children either out of a situation that I was in or never to be in a situation that I was in. I know I'm not going to get to every child, but I would like the number of abused children when I die to be fewer than when I was born, if that makes sense. And everyone has their little niche activism interest, and like mine is sexually traumatized children. Like, that is people that I want to really work to protect. There's something else I was gonna say. About, just in wrap up. I am also aware that it is very likely that this video of my incredulous, righteous anger is probably just going to fade into the background of cyberspace, and it'll just be one more attempt to start a conversation that nobody feels is necessary to start or have. And, that, like, makes me sad. It makes me sad that I'm not sure how much I try if things are ever really going to change. So if that's what happens, I don't think I'm going to give up. I try again, something different. Keep trying different things to make this, and obviously like work in my day-to-day life to be there for children and to be there for survivors, and because I think that even if even if all I can do is help one child, then I feel like it does give me more of a sense of purpose. It makes me feel like, okay, there was something worthwhile about going through everything that I went through. So yeah. So that's my little talk on this issue, and be safe and have a lovely day.